Hello, welcome to this preview of The Banker's February edition. I'm Brian Caplen, editor. I'm with Joy Macknight, the deputy editor, and we're talking about the top 500 banking brands. Joy, at this time of the year, this is our cover story. We always come out with the top 500 banking brands, and the Chinese banks have done well again. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's been another stellar year for the top Chinese banking brands, spearheaded really by ICBC, which for the third year in a row is the world's most valuable banking brand. It added 35% to its brand value. It just goes from strength to strength.
And so we've got now 4 Chinese banks in the top 5, is that right?
Yeah, it's really impressive. So Agricultural Bank of China leapfrogged its compatriot Bank of China, but also Wells Fargo. So it leapfrogged into third place, pushing Wells Fargo into fifth.
Okay, well, so obviously Wells Fargo has had some issues of its own, which probably affected the brand valuation. But how have American banks done more generally?
Well, China still leads in the country table, again adding about 28% to its brand valuation aggregate. Brand valuation, but the US banks actually did relatively well. So they've added in aggregate 14%, so about half that of the Chinese banks. The US now has 81 banks in the ranking, which is 5 more than last year, and altogether they've done really well. If you think about it, there's only 3 banks out of those 81s that have actually seen a decline in brand valuation. But one of them was Wells Fargo, and the other was another big brand, which is Chase.
Okay, so the big names there have not done quite so well. Now let's turn finally to Europe, and there's a bit more of a mixed picture, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So Europe only grew its brand valuation by less than 5%, so pretty limited growth there, lackluster.
All right, and there's been a lot of problems in Germany, hasn't there?
Yeah,
tell us a bit about that.
So that's a big one. So Germany saw a contraction in brand value by about 24%.
Okay, this is partly to do with Deutsche Bank.
Yeah, so Deutsche Bank saw a 30% decline.
What about the UK? I mean, what about the whole Brexit factor? Has that been affecting the
I think it
brands?
has. Interestingly, in the country tables, Canada has overtaken the UK and moved into third place, pushing UK into fourth place this year. Okay,
and that's not really what you'd expect when you think that the UK is a big financial centre.
No, exactly, and especially in the number of banks that are in the ranking, you know, Canada compared to the UK.
Oh, and what about Hsbc? I mean, that's normally up in the top there somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah, so Hsbc is again the only European brand that's in the top 10. It grew its brand valuation by about 9%, which is pretty impressive given the Brexit factor. But it also did a big brand refresh in 2018, which has been very successful for it.
And that's interesting because when you think about Hsbc, I mean, it has always had this very strong brand campaign, hasn't it? You know, so it's noted throughout the world, you know, in every airport and so forth. So it's sort of building on that. Yeah.
So what it did was sort of modernize its brand. So it's still using the hexagon, the red and white hexagon logo. It has "Thrive Together" is sort of their tagline. They modernized it in order for it to be a part of their digital transformation journey and be able to be seen very easily on all different channels. So I think that was their strong point.
All right, so just finally on Europe, I mean, we've talked about the negative spots, but what about bright spots? Are there countries that are doing well?
Yeah, so the Dutch banks doing very well. Portuguese banks are also performing quite well. And even the Italian banks did relatively well, growing their brand value in aggregate by about 18%.
Okay. Joy, thanks very much. We're looking forward to looking at the ranking in detail.